see us, but we can't see you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Some lights on or something, so we can...
Would anyone like to ask any questions, or be any questions? Raise your hands, I'll come to you.
I'm really interested, you know, if anybody has any input into whether they think it's important to maintain traditions as well.
When you ask a question, please say who you are. Sorry,
my name is Danish, and listen, I'd like to ask you about, you've studied all these traditions, you've lived in all parts of Europe. What are you taking back to be your family traditions? Are they the ones that you were brought up with? I'm conscious that when you live in this particular Christmas, you get your traditions from your family, but then if you get married, you've got two families to combine, so you change it subtly each time. So, how do you pick the traditions that become now part of your family and you pass it to your children and grandchildren?
I look as if I give in, and then I do what I want. Actually, I think when the time is as well, Christmas, people either have Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner. So I sort of shifted it to about 4 or 5 o'clock. So it's somewhere in the middle. But in terms of there are certain things that I've sort of picked up because I really like them. The Spanish tradition of Christmas isn't, the Christmas Day itself isn't very important. It's the night before that matters. In France, there's the 13 desserts, and I do sometimes still do that. Does anybody know that tradition, the 13 desserts? It's not as arduous as it sounds. It's nuts and fruit. There will be 13 different varieties, quince taste, that kind of thing. And there is usually a centrepiece, but what it is a kind of open larder. So it gets set out on Christmas Eve, and then it runs through till 12th night. So it basically means that if people come, you know, visit you, which is the big thing at Christmas, particularly around the Mediterranean, where the weather's better and you don't get wet. And you've always got something to offer people, so that I carry with me. But in terms of the I probably followed, I think the women on the hill tend to follow the man's family a little bit, and I probably did that to some extent. So I went for the Christmas pudding, whereas my inclination might have been apple tart. So I think, but it does become an amalgam, there's no question. But it's possible actually to put in new ideas, because in the valley in Spain, I sort of used to do things. People come and sit around my table. And I did get a reputation as a very good cook. So people would say, you know, I tell you something, there's, in Spain we have migas, which is in many ways with dried bread, as you know. You soak it down and fry it off. And I liked it crisp, but you don't always get it like that. Sometimes just soaked with olive oil in it. But I used to use those to top broad beans. Do you know that when you cook them in the pod and they taste like asparagus in the first thing? Well, I used to make migas and put them on the top. And by the time I left, everybody in the valley made migas and put them on the top.
Tradition there.
Exactly. So it's movable. It's much more malleable than one thinks. Things change, I think.
I wanted to ask you, on this question of inventing traditions and bringing them home, did you manage to get all of your children to like the same foods? And if so, how?
Bribery and physical violence. I did institute when I decided they had to learn to cook. So they each had a day. So if they were really worried about somebody else's cooking, then they were going to be worried.
They did have preferences.
They probably had preferences. Let me think. One doesn't eat mushrooms.
That's quite common.
And I think I left them with the neighbours for a week, and they had nothing but boiled eggs, and they were really cross when I got back.
But as fussiness goes, that doesn't stand too bad.
No, they did. Yesterday I said to my daughter, because I was staying there, would you like a boiled egg? And she just looked at me and said, no, mother. And we both knew exactly what she meant.
Hi, it's Jenny here. I was just thinking that learning other people's ways of doing things is really fascinating, because I was reminded of a wonderful day I spent with a Soviet friend and her mother who didn't speak any English, showing me how to make salma, and the way they folded the cabbage leaves was really, really important to them. I think for English traditions, I'm quite interested in the way the internet can really remind us of things that maybe we've forgotten about. And there's a woman in Kansas who writes a blog, and she's really interested in British traditions. And when I read her blog, there are so many things that I've never even heard of, like Stir Up Sunday, for example, which is in November. I'm sure lots of people know about this, but I didn't know about it. So I think it's maybe the traditions that a lot of us have forgotten about or don't know about, maybe we'll get a revival because people are writing about them on the internet.
I think it's a very good point, because on the Oxford Symposium, where I'm the director, which is basically dog's body, let's not get around about it. On the Facebook, there's usually a very vigorous dialogue about, from Russia to, we have people from all over the place, and they do discuss things like salmon with some passion. But the stir-up Sundays, that's really great, the Christmas pudding. I think people still do that a bit. So whether or not she's highlighting things that are already in, that's also possible. I was in Fortnum Mason's yesterday, Jane was there too, staring at a display of elderberry ketchup at $7.95. Well, I don't know. So therefore, it's hard to understand actually what's going on. And jelly and the roasted and things. $7.95. Wrong business.
This question, can I just say one thing on this? That I'm fascinated by, I think that's such a good question on the link between technology and tradition. It's something I've been thinking about a lot of my list, but considered before. Because I agree, I think that in many cases, new cooking technologies are probably going to keep old traditional ways of cooking alive, which otherwise would just die out. And I'm thinking, for example, of the electric rice cooker, which just transformed life for millions of women in Korea, Japan, anywhere that people eat short grain, sticky rice. It used to dominate the evening, making it in an earthenware pot and simmering it for just the right amount of time and ratio of water. And just being able to do that with a flick of a switch meant that people could make exactly the same rice, it tasted exactly the same, felt just as traditional, and yet it hadn't wasted somebody's time.
And you didn't have to buy special rice.
Didn't have to buy special rice, it was the same rice.
Well, Morocco, instant couscous. It used to take hours and hours and hours. You've got to soak it, and then roll it, and soak it, and roll it, and steam it, and soak it, and roll it, and nowadays it's instant couscous. So,
it's hard to achieve with innovations like that, and you think that will keep people cooking, because it makes the same thing accessible in a way that's so much easier.
Elizabeth, it's Rosemary over here. Thank you for a wonderful chat, which has been fantastic. I was very intrigued with what you said about the feeling for tradition in food is absolutely overwhelming. And I think we've seen this quite well in our village at home near Chichester. We started a community garden in the village, and it's going very well. This is the end of our third growing season. And it's been a little bit middle class, I suppose, up until this year. But it's getting a wider variety of people coming along and joining us. And they're all bringing a lot to it. We have a cooker, which is an old washing machine drum with a car wheel on top of it. And we have a big round pan, which is like a paella pan. And quite often we just go around the garden and pick whatever's ready, and usually we have rice, and it ends up as a paella type lunch that we all join in. But what is really exciting me at the moment is that we have a Spanish member, and she is doing things like, we have an open afternoon on Sunday, so she will bring jars of olives from her village, and her father makes chorizo, and she brings that back from Spain for us, and she's bought anchovies from the local fishermen and is drying and salting them for our, we all thought chutney was a bit exciting, but suddenly we've got all these other things coming out. We have a new member from the Czech Republic who's was married to a Sri Lankan. And so can you imagine how excited I am that suddenly these people who want to grow, because it's what happened at home, are joining us, and we all grow together and crop share. And this sharing of knowledge now is becoming exciting. So I think we have to be open to these other experiences that are there for us much more accessibly now, because obviously you learn so much by travelling. But it's just wonderful to see it all coming back in ways that I hope we will learn from.
I think that sounds wonderful. Very stimulating.
Yes,
Because there's always been an exchange of skills, and it sort of seems to be part of human nature. But it's very fast now. In the early days, I think it was much slower. Things were assimilated much more slowly. And now it's really rapid.
The connections between Wales and Spain, which are then also
I know,
the lovely food from Ultra.
Ultra comida. It's giving you all that food. It's fantastic. A short moment, actually, when 15 years ago, wasn't it, Shimano? And it first opened in Yarra, and it was a little tiny shop at the top. And there was a line of, the Welsh are not tall. So you can tell, sort of, because we are quite a shopping area, we're fairly kind of back in the hills, which is where I live. And Aberystwyth was the big town. It's got a university, and it's got the National Library of Wales. And we're quite sophisticated down there, really, exactly. And in came this shop with these wonderful, that Serrano ham, and absolutely beautiful cheeses, Spanish cheeses, French cheeses, and there they all were, and there was this little line, and Shimano speaks Welsh. She's Welsh schooled and everything, and it wasn't the posh people from the university or the tourists who were going in there. It was the locals, because we are a dairy area, and dairy always has pig, because the way it went to the pig. This carries on long after the need for it disappears. And the people in that queue could recognise good ham and good cheese, and they were prepared to pay for it. So that's really, that was the root cause of it. It wasn't that it was so different, it was because it was the same, and that was joyous, absolutely fabulous. So now I can go and get chorizo, and I'm not.
I think we have time for one more question.
John Whiting, you mentioned all the Romanians who went home to Germany after Ceausescu was deposed. When I was in Sibiu 30 years ago, I woke up on a Sunday morning to a landscape covered with fresh snow, and everyone was on their way to church. And I decided on an impulse that I would follow along and see what happened. I knew even less then than I know now, and so I was astonished to discover that all of the music, both choral and organ, was by J.S. Bach, and the sermon was in German.
Yeah. That would be the Lutheran Church. Actually, there's still a seminary there, and if you are in Sibiu, which somebody might be, it was the City of Culture 2 years ago. In the seminary, again, it's German speaking, but they're cooking Romanian food, and you can go and join them along the table, and there's only one menu, and it comes plonked down in front of you. And it's a great experience. It's just off the main square. And that's now. That wasn't then, because it wasn't necessary. Everybody was cooking at home. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.